There are a lot of questions which comes into our mind whenever we talk about America, about this racism. Why white Americans hate black Americans? Why are these negative stories still exist about black Americans? How and why this clash started? What's the story? Everyone want to know about it, so welcome everyone to this most conversational video. Today, our focus will be on the historical story between black and white Americans, a story shaped by centuries of struggle, misunderstanding, and the quest for equality. Here are some key factors that have contributed to the development of racial hatred or discrimination by some white Americans toward black Americans. 1. Historical _ legacy of slavery. 2. Jim Crow laws and segregation. 3. Fear of loss of power, fear of power. 4. Racial media. 5. White supremacy ideology. 6. Fear of crime and racial profiling. 7. Scapegoating. 8. Political polarization and identity politics. 9. Racism passed down through generations. 10. Cultural differences. 1. Historical legacy of slavery. The U.S. was built on a system of slavery where black people were legally considered property and subjected to brutal conditions. This created a belief in white superiority, and even after slavery was abolished in 1865, many white Americans continued to view black people as inferior. These attitudes were passed down through generations, contributing to ongoing racial animosity. 2. Jim Crow laws and segregation. After the Civil War and the abolition of slavery, many Southern states enacted Jim Crow laws that enforced racial segregation, marginalizing black Americans and treating them as second-class citizens. These laws created deep racial divides, often portraying black Americans as threats to the social order or as inherently inferior, reinforcing racist attitudes among white Americans. 3. Fear of loss of power. As black Americans gained civil rights and began to demand equality, some white Americans felt threatened by the prospect of losing economic, social, and political power. Racial animosity can grow when groups compete for jobs, resources, or status, with some white people fearing that racial equality would mean a loss of their own privilege or opportunities. 4. Racial media. Historically, black Americans have been portrayed in media and popular culture through harmful stereotypes, depicting them as dangerous, lazy, or untrustworthy. These representations have reinforced negative biases and racist attitudes in some white Americans, perpetuating fear or dislike based on these false perceptions. 5. White supremacy ideology. White supremacy is the belief that white people are inherently superior to other races. This ideology has been a foundation for various hate groups, such as the Ku Klux Klan, which actively promoted violence and hatred toward black Americans. White supremacist beliefs are deeply rooted in the notion that black people are a threat to the purity or dominance of the white race. 6. Fear of crime and racial profiling. Crime statistics and media reports can contribute to racial fear. For example, the association between crime and black Americans has been exaggerated in the media, leading some white Americans to associate blackness with criminality. This has fostered fear, distrust, and hatred, often based on racial profiling and selective attention to certain crimes. 7. Scapegoating. In times of economic downturn or social unrest, minority groups, including black Americans, have historically been scapegoated for larger societal problems. Some white Americans blame black people for unemployment, crime, or other societal issues, rather than recognizing the systemic causes of these problems. 8. Political polarization and identity politics. In recent years, discussions about race have become heavily politicized in the U.S. Some white Americans feel that movements advocating for racial equality, such as Black Lives Matter, challenge their identity or values, leading to defensiveness and resentment. Racial justice efforts can sometimes be framed by certain political groups as threatening to white interests, further deepening divisions. 9. Racism passed down through generations. Racial attitudes and beliefs are often passed down from one generation to the next. If a person grows up in a family or community that harbors racist views, they may adopt those views without questioning them. This perpetuates the cycle of racism and can lead to continued hatred toward Black Americans. 10. Cultural differences. Sometimes, cultural differences in language, music, and lifestyle can be misunderstood or viewed with suspicion, especially when one group is unfamiliar with the other. Instead of seeing these differences as enriching, some white Americans may respond with prejudice, viewing Black culture as other or inferior. Modern-day conspiracy theories. Fast forward to today, and we see the resurgence of conspiracy theories fueled by social media. Narratives claiming that Black Americans are involved in conspiracies to undermine society continue to circulate. Misinformation spreads rapidly, reinforcing divisions and creating an environment where fear prevails over understanding. Hope and progress. Despite the challenges, there is hope. Movements for justice, equality, and representation have emerged, driven by individuals from all backgrounds. Together, we can weave a new narrative, one of unity, understanding, and shared humanity. Let us strive to break the cycle of hate and build a future where all people are celebrated for their unique contributions.